Motorcycles are supposed to be symbols of freedom and pure emotion. But what happens when that promise crashes and burns? These are the bikes that look like the future, but failed spectacularly, becoming cautionary tales of wild ideas and broken promises. We're not just talking about bad bikes. We're talking about the biggest motorcycle disasters ever built. Because hidden inside these failures are lessons about what riders truly want and what happens when manufacturers forget the heart of motorcycling. Let's dive into the 10 biggest motorcycle disasters ever built. Number 10. Honda Pacific Coast PC800. Too clean for its own good. Back in the late 1980s, Honda rolled out something radically different. The Honda Pacific Coast PC800 wasn't built to impress the chrome polishing crowd. It was built for practicality. Think of it as a motorcycle designed by engineers who spent too much time studying minivans. It had full car-like bodywork, enclosed mechanicals, and even a massive built-in trunk that could swallow 2 helmets or a week's worth of groceries. It was quiet, it was clean, and it was almost maintenance-free. On paper, it was brilliant, but that was exactly the problem. Riders didn't want a motorcycle that looked like an appliance. It didn't rumble, it didn't shine, and it didn't inspire the same kind of emotional pull as a Harley or Goldwing. Critics compared it to riding a refrigerator on wheels, and buyers walked past showrooms with a shrug. The Pacific Coast ended up being a solution to a problem nobody was asking Honda to solve. Back when it was new, the PC800 sold for around $7,000. Today, you can pick up a clean used one for $3,000 to $5,000, sometimes a little higher if it's immaculate. Collectors don't chase them, but practical riders who want an anti-motorcycle bike often scoop them up. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe right now so you don't miss any others. Now, while the Pacific Coast proved that being too practical can backfire, another motorcycle flop came from the exact opposite problem, chasing youth and urban cool, but delivering none of it. Number 9. Harley-Davidson Street 500. Harley-Davidson built its name on big, loud American machines with chrome, thunder, and attitude. But in 2014, Harley took a gamble. They wanted to build a bike for younger riders, for urban commutes, and even for global markets like India. The result? The Street 500. On paper, it made sense. They were the lightest Harleys in decades, water-cooled, and relatively affordable. The idea was that a college kid or a first-time rider in Mumbai or Los Angeles could finally step into the Harley family. The problem? These bikes didn't feel like Harleys. The finish was cheap. The power was underwhelming. The exhaust note was muted. And build quality? Owners reported recalls, rough paint, and mechanical issues that embarrassed the brand. Riders said the bikes had zero soul. Even die-hard Harley fans didn't want them. And the younger riders they were targeting just went straight to Japanese bikes, which were cheaper, faster, and more reliable. By 2020, Harley quietly killed off the Street series in the United States. When they first launched, a Street 500 could be had new for around $7,000 and the 750 for a bit more. Today, you can find used examples flooding the second-hand market for as little as $3,000. Some barely crack $4,000, even in near-new condition, because demand is almost non-existent. The Street series was supposed to be Harley's future, but instead it became a lesson, a reminder that heritage brands can't abandon their DNA. Riders buy Harley for thunder, chrome, and pride, not for bland commuter bikes. And while Harley's flop came from forgetting its roots, another motorcycle failure came from going too far into the future, with tech so advanced that riders simply weren't ready for it. Number 8. BMW C1, the roofed scooter. In 2000, BMW decided to rewrite the rules of urban commuting. The result was the C1, a scooter with a roof, seat belts, and even a built-in roll cage. The pitch was simple. City riders deserved car-like safety with motorcycle convenience, no helmet required in some markets, no rain on your head, a dash of German engineering. On paper, it sounded futuristic, but reality hit hard. The C1 weighed nearly 400 pounds more than most scooters in its class, making it clumsy and slow in traffic. The roof, instead of looking sleek, made it resemble a golf cart that had lost its way onto city streets. And the price? Almost double what a normal scooter cost at the time. Riders looked at it and said, why not just buy a car? Culturally, the C1 missed the point of two-wheel freedom. Riders wanted agility, style, and wind in their hair. The C1 took all of that away and replaced it with something that looked awkward at best and embarrassing at worst. Sales numbers trickled in at a crawl, and BMW finally pulled the plug after just a few years. Today, the C1 has become a quirky collector's item. Prices range from $2,000 to $4,000, depending on condition, but you'll rarely see one outside of Europe. Owners love the novelty, but most admit it was never a true rider's machine. The C1 proves that being too clever, too futuristic, and too weird can kill a bike before it even gets started. But if BMW's failure looked like a golf cart, another flop went the other direction. So radical, so alien in its styling, that riders simply couldn't look past it. Number 7. Victory Vision, the alien cruiser. When Polaris launched the Victory Vision in 2008, they wanted to build a luxury touring cruiser that could go toe-to-toe with Harley's Electra Glide and Honda's Goldwing. On the spec sheet, the Vision was strong. It had a 1,700cc Freedom V-twin, over 90 horsepower, plush comfort, and reliable Polaris engineering. By all logic, it should have been a hit. But then came the design. The Vision didn't look like a cruiser. It looked like a spaceship on two wheels. Sweeping plastic bodywork, massive front fairing, and lines so radical that even Star Trek fans would have raised an eyebrow. Traditional cruiser riders, Harley's bread and butter audience, took one look and turned away. It was too futuristic, too bold, and completely disconnected from what riders actually wanted in a touring bike. Back when it was new, a Victory Vision cost around $15,000 to $20,000. Today, used examples can be found for as little as $6,000, with pristine models going closer to $10,000. Value collapsed not because it was a bad bike, but because so few wanted to be seen riding one. The Vision proves that comfort and reliability don't matter if design alienates the very people you're trying to win. And while Victory scared riders off with styling, another infamous flop came from chasing speed and technology far ahead of its time. Number 6. Yamaha GTS1000. Too advanced for its time. In the early 1990s, Yamaha swung for the fences. The GTS1000 was supposed to be the future of motorcycling. Instead of a fork, it had hub-center steering. Instead of carbs, it had fuel injection. It even came with anti-lock brakes, years before most riders even knew what that meant. On paper, this was revolution. But revolution comes with a price. A brand new GTS1000 cost around $12,000 in 1993. Compare that to a Honda CBR or a Kawasaki Ninja, which were thousands cheaper and far faster, and you see why riders hesitated. The Yamaha was heavy, expensive, and while the steering tech was brilliant, most riders didn't trust it. They wanted forks, not some exotic car-style setup that felt alien. Today, though, collectors see it differently. A clean GTS1000 can still be found for $4,000 to $6,000, and it's seen as a fascinating piece of engineering history. It was too early, too different, and too expensive. A bike that proves sometimes being right isn't enough if the timing is wrong. But while the GTS failed for being too advanced, another flop from the same era stumbled for the opposite reason. It wasn't bold enough. Number 5. Kawasaki Voyager. 12. A tourer lost in the shadows. In the touring wars of the late 80s and early 90s, one name ruled the highways: the Honda Goldwing. It was big, plush, powerful, and it owned the market. Kawasaki wanted a piece of that pie, so they rolled out the Voyager 1200. On paper, it had the ingredients: a liquid-cooled inline-4, shaft drive, full touring fairings, big saddlebags, and even a sound system. It was smooth, reliable, and could eat up highway miles all day. But there was one major problem: it simply wasn't special. The Voyager weighed nearly 800 pounds, but it didn't deliver the same refined comfort as the Goldwing. It didn't have the same dealer support, the same reputation, or the same cult following. Riders looked at it and thought, why settle when Honda has the real thing? Kawasaki tried to keep it alive with updates, stretching its life well into the 90s. But sales lagged year after year, always overshadowed by Honda's dominance. Riders who wanted touring luxury went to Honda. Riders who wanted sporty touring went to Yamaha or BMW. The Voyager was stuck in no man's land, good but never great. Prices today reflect that lack of passion. You can find a Voyager 12 for $2,000 to $4,000 in solid condition, far cheaper than comparable gold wings of the same era. Owners praised the reliability, but the market never gave it love. The Voyager 12 shows what happens when a bike plays it too safe. Instead of carving its own path, it tried to mimic the leader and ended up forgotten. But while Kawasaki faded in the touring class, let's get into a bike that was such a huge mistake. It became a comedy legend. Number 4, Buell Blast, the bike nobody wanted to learn on. Harley-Davidson thought it had the perfect plan: create a small, cheap, easy motorcycle that could bring new riders into the Harley family. That was the idea behind the Buell Blast, launched in the early 2000s. On paper, it made sense. It was lightweight, had a single-cylinder engine, and promised low maintenance. But in reality, the Blast became the poster child of failure in the motorcycle world. The bike looked ugly right out of the gate. Plastic bodywork, awkward proportions, and a design that felt slapped together. Riders who wanted cool did not find it here. Instead, they saw a half-finished project. Add to that an engine that was weak, vibrating like a lawnmower, and you had a recipe for disaster. The whole point of the Buell Blast was to teach beginners. But even beginners want something they can be proud of. Nobody wants to roll up to bike night on a motorcycle that looks and feels like punishment. The Blast felt cheap, underpowered, and uninspiring. For a company with a heritage of building big, loud American cruisers, the Blast was a complete identity crisis. Still, for all its flaws, the Blast is an interesting lesson. Harley learned the hard way that entry-level doesn't have to mean soulless. Other brands like Honda and Kawasaki nailed beginner bikes that actually inspired confidence. But the Buell Blast? It remains the bike nobody wanted, a reminder that even giants can trip over their own boots. And speaking of tripping, stay tuned, because the worst 3 bikes on this list are coming up. And trust me, these weren't just flops. They were full-blown disasters that left riders angry and companies embarrassed. You do not want to miss them. Number 3, Moto Guzzi MGX21 Flying Fortress, style over sense. If the Buell Blast failed because it was too plain, the Moto Guzzi MGX21 Flying Fortress failed for the exact opposite reason. This bike was all about show: huge batwing fairing, bright red cylinder heads sticking out, and carbon fiber panels everywhere. It looked like something straight out of a futuristic concept art sketch. Moto Guzzi wanted to prove it could build a long-distance cruiser that stood toe-to-toe with Harley-Davidson and Indian. Instead, it built one of the strangest motorcycles of the decade. The MGX21 was powered by a massive V-twin engine and carried serious weight. On the open road, it wasn't terrible. It had stability, comfort, and the usual Moto Guzzi character. But the problem wasn't performance. The problem was perception. Riders could not get past how this thing looked. It was as if an Italian designer mixed a stealth bomber with a Gothic opera mask, then slapped handlebars on it. And the price? Outrageous. The MGX21 cost far more than rival touring bikes from Harley and Indian, which were already proven, reliable, and backed by decades of loyal riders. Why would anyone spend more money on a cruiser that looked like it came from another planet, when the classics already delivered better comfort and resale value? That was the question buyers asked, and the answer was silence. Dealership floors told the truth. These bikes sat. They gathered dust. The hype Moto Guzzi hoped for never arrived, because while people admired it at shows, they didn't actually want to own it. The MGX21 became a poster bike for style over sense. Moto Guzzi fans felt let down too. Instead of refining its solid, quirky heritage bikes, the company swung for the fences and struck out. Today, the MGX21 is remembered as a "what were they thinking" machine, a flashy cruiser that forgot motorcycles are supposed to connect with the rider, not just blind them with spectacle. And yet, as strange as it was, the MGX21 isn't the only motorcycle that let futuristic ideas crash into harsh reality. Because sometimes being too advanced can sink a bike just as badly as being too weird. Number 2, Honda DN01. The future that nobody wanted. When Honda unveiled the DN01, it looked like something ripped straight out of a sci-fi movie. The company called it a crossover, a strange blend of cruiser, scooter, and sport bike. The problem? Riders didn't know what it was supposed to be. Was it a futuristic cruiser? Was it a maxi scooter in disguise? Or was it an experiment that even Honda itself couldn't explain? The design was strange. The bodywork swept forward like a plastic spaceship. The seat was low like a cruiser, and the riding position was halfway between relaxed and awkward. At the heart of the bike was Honda's advanced HFT automatic transmission, a system meant to bring smooth, clutch-free riding into the big bike world. On paper, it sounded revolutionary. In reality, it was confusing, overly complicated, and far too expensive. When the DN01 hit dealerships in the late 2000s, it carried a price tag of nearly $15,000. That was more than a brand new Honda CBR sport bike, more than a middleweight cruiser, and dangerously close to the cost of a full touring machine. Riders looked at it, scratched their heads, and asked the obvious question, why? Performance wasn't the answer either. The DN01 was powered by a 700cc V-twin that barely produced 60 horsepower. That kind of power might have worked for a basic commuter bike, but not for something priced like a premium tourer. It was heavy, slow to accelerate, and the automatic transmission robbed it of the connection that most motorcyclists crave. Sales tanked almost immediately. Dealerships couldn't move them, even when the price was slashed. The bike developed a reputation as a joke, the motorcycle that nobody asked for. Today, used DN01s can sometimes be found for around $5,000, a steep drop that shows just how little the market valued them. And yet the DN01 has become a curious collector's item. Some riders admire it for its boldness, its daring attempt to bring something new. But most remember it as a symbol of how even Honda, the world's most calculated motorcycle company, can swing and miss. Still, Honda wasn't the only one guilty of building a futuristic flop. Another Japanese giant tried to cash in on radical styling and raw power, and created a naked beast that scared away the very riders it was meant to attract. Number 1. Suzuki B-King, the Hayabusa's odd brother. If the Honda DN01 failed for being too weird and too weak, the Suzuki B-King failed for the exact opposite reasons. It was too big, too strong, and too outrageous for its own good. The story of the B-King begins with the legendary Hayabusa. In the late 90s, the Hayabusa shattered speed records and became a cultural icon. Suzuki decided to take that same engine and put it into a naked street fighter. On paper, it was brilliant. A naked bike with superbike horsepower? That sounded like pure adrenaline. But when the production B-King hit the market in 2007, the dream collapsed. First, the design. This bike looked like a transformer with cartoonishly huge dual exhausts that resembled rocket launchers. Instead of sleek aggression, it looked clumsy, bloated, and downright strange. Many riders couldn't get past its appearance, no matter how good the engine was. And make no mistake, the engine was good. A 1,300cc inline-4 pumping out over 150 horsepower meant the B-King could shred pavement with ease. The problem was weight. At nearly 550 pounds dry, the bike felt heavy and unwieldy compared to rivals. Riders who wanted naked aggression bought the Kawasaki Z1000 or Yamaha FZ1, bikes that looked better, cost less, and felt more balanced. Then came the price. The B-King was expensive, landing close to $12,000 new. For that money, you could buy a fully fared sport bike that looked sharper and performed better, or even step into the used Hayabusa market itself. Few riders saw the point of spending that kind of cash on a naked bike that looked more like a parody than a predator. Suzuki realized the mistake quickly. Within just a couple of years, the B-King was gone. Today, it's remembered as a failed experiment, the Hayabusa's odd, unwanted brother. Used prices hover around $5,000 to $7,000 depending on condition, but they rarely sell fast. The B-King remains a cautionary tale. Power alone doesn't sell motorcycles. Riders want style, balance, and character. Without those, even a beast with Hayabusa DNA can flop. And as wild as the B-King was, it wasn't the only Japanese machine to fail from pushing too far, too fast. Yamaha once tried to launch a bike that was years ahead of its time, and that gamble ended just as badly. Every flop tells a story, but now I want to hear yours. Which of these bikes do you think deserved a second chance? And which ones should stay buried in history? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Also, click on the next video coming up on your screen right now. And don't forget, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and ring the bell so you never miss another deep dive into motorcycle history.